Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Swine Day. Our first speaker today, this morning, will be Ray and Dave Price from Sunterra Farms. Ray is the president of the Sunterra group of companies, including Sunterra Meats, Sunterra Markets, and Sunterra based in Alberta and the Midwestern United States. Mr. Price is the director of the board of the Canadian Meat Council and also served on the board of government of Canada's Council of Science and Technology Advisor. Dave was born and raised as part of a mixed farming family near Acme, Alberta. He's one of the founders of Sunterra group of companies. Dave has been active as a member of a number of local, provincial, and national organizations, primarily associated with the production and processing of food and associated trade and economic policies. So Dave and Ray are going to come up and talk to us today. Let's please help me welcome our speakers.
Morning, everybody. Real pleasure to be here. It's a big crowd, a little nervous, actually a lot nervous. 50% of the pig production, I'm going, see you later. It is a real pleasure to be here. When we looked at the program, it looks like an awesome day. And you know, when talking to John, we said we'll set the bar real low so that everybody after us actually looks really good, and we forget about us entirely. So our plan today is just to, try to get through this and hopefully leave a little bit of time at the end for questions if anybody has any. So we'll start, and I think what we talk a little bit about the background and how Sunterra came to be what we are now.
So the image of that barn probably is one that's familiar to many of you. Our roots really is in a mixed farm where we had pigs, chickens, dairy cattle, purebred Hereford cattle for beef, and did everything and anything that we could to have our own operation work. Mom and Dad worked hard. They instilled in us principles of sort of looking for opportunities and pursuing those as best we could. And you'll see here, we moved from being a family farm business with an interest in what the future might hold to starting a company called Pig Improvement Canada Limited. And the founders of that company you'll see here in your bottom left corner is Dr. Howard Ferdine, good family friend, world-renowned geneticist who had in his history working with and developing the comb breed of pigs, and a strong sense of performance testing and what that means in terms of carcass quality. The fellow in the middle is Dr. Jack Greenway, who's now passed away, but he was one of the first North American veterinarians to establish a minimal disease, or what then was called SPF lab, where hysterectomy operations were put on sows to create relatively low disease incidence populations of pigs. And in the bottom right corner is Ken Woolley, who some of you may know from the PIC USA days. He was part of our organization, which in PIC's case was the second international location in the world after France. Canada was next, and in turn we provided some genetic base for the US and Mexico in the early 70s.
And Mom and Dad are up on the
And
left.
then, of course, top left-hand corner is our Mom and Dad.
And that was a picture of Dave 2 years ago, 3 years ago? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's not quite 2 extra zeros, but at least one.
Dave's the number one employee, the first employee of PIC or now Sunterra. I've just recently joined. It's only been 39 years for me, so he's ahead of me.
So yeah, just some pictures to show the original population, a little bit more context. Our family farm evolved from being, the principal target was to be a beef cattle producer. That's what Dad had grown up doing. And when we got hailed out 4 years in a row out of 5, the diversification happened in terms of shifting from dairy production, skim milk, feeder pigs into breeding pigs. Dad actually was one of the first importers of landrace swine into North America. And we had a pretty good genetic program of our own, but when we met with Ken Woolley, we could see that the breeding pyramid and some of the discipline there and what Howard and Jack told us about convinced us that we couldn't scale and be impactful on our own, so we made the decision to join with PIC and establish the first population. You can see the high level of standards that were animal welfare friendly when we had the first importation of pigs flown in. You can see the lady there that's obviously taking care of them. And
We're going to that in our barns now. All the workers are going to have that attire.
those high heels are a little tough on slats though, but the top left corner actually was our international transportation vehicle. That truck actually brought pigs into Wisconsin from Alberta to help start the first nucleus herd there.
That picture is just about as old as that other one of Dave.
Yeah, just the top left is another picture of Dad in our local garage, and the sort of that dealership, just to give you another little tidbit, was the largest marketing dealership in southern Alberta, in a little town of 500 people. But it was somebody that really knew how to connect with consumers and provide the service. The construction pictures are just the establishment of our nucleus herd near Acme. You can see we had some weather challenges in late September. We normally don't have snow, despite what you might assume at that time of year. Of note is this nucleus herd had performance testing capacity that exceeded the combined amount available in government test stations in Canada in that time in 1970.
So from there, 1970 was when Pig Improvement Canada started. Obviously, our parents and grandparents have been farming for forever before that. Don't know when we weren't farmers. Our genetics come back from actually Wisconsin, Minnesota, up into Alberta, and previously that England and Wales and Scotland. And everybody was farmers that we can track back, so it's kind of in the blood for sure. What we decided, or what we started looking at in the 70s and then into the 80s, is the swine genetic business was a dynamic and growing business. We had a pretty good market share in Canada in the early or late 80s. But we really thought that we started to be concerned about meat quality and pork quality at the time. We actually hired a meat scientist in the mid 90s. But part of it was buying small processors, only doing about 150 to 200 pigs a week. But we really liked it because we could get in there and do some meat quality testing and see what the actual final product was. So, being naive farm boys, there's Dave and I were part of 6 brothers and 1 sister, and as my dad used to say, 1.5 dozen kids. I'm sure it felt like that around the house most of the time, but we decided that it was something that we wanted to do, is to take it downstream and have a look at what consumers wanted, because then we could design the genetics for what the consumer directly wanted. And at the same time, in 1990, we started out in a provincial plant. Only could it's like your state plants down here can't export across state lines, can't export across provincial lines. But in 1993, we received federal inspection and started selling into Japan. And now it's a big market for us in Japan. At the same time, we opened our first store in 1990, our Sunterra Markets. Again, quite a bit of naivety played into that. We just thought, good food, we knew we could produce it. We weren't seeing it on the supermarket shelves. How do we get it on the supermarket shelves? And, realistically, we thought, well, we'll buy a plant and we'll set up a food store, and people will come and eat it and they'll like it and they'll come back. And that's what started. Bottom left is my brother Glenn, or our brother Glenn. He's in charge of our retail side of it. And we, back in the 90s, 1990, we felt that home meal replacement, which was very important, we thought. It was only about 15 years ahead of its time, but it's been good to us, and we've carried the same thought process about building our own pigs. Another brother has a cattle feedlot. He's got about 4,000 cows and about 25,000 head of feedlot capacity. So we utilize his beef, we utilize our pork. but we also make all the cakes and pastries in the store. So we want to have control from one end to the other, and that's sort of the path that we've gone down. And just to talk a little bit more about pig production, we're based in Alberta. That's in the western side. For anybody that doesn't know where the Rocky Mountains are, we're close to the Rocky Mountains, close enough that we should go there more often than don't. But it's a great place, great area of the country, lots of land. Predominant feed that we use is wheat with some barley, depending on whether the beer drinkers drink more of the barley or whether the wheat is more priced going to export. So we'll go either way. We've got 2 operations in Ontario, and then a lot of our finishing production is actually in northwest Iowa and southeast South Dakota. A couple pictures of our barns in Alberta. We also have. We can't get out of the genetic business. We sold the PIC marketing rights in Canada in 1998. Big step. But the genetics stayed. We have to play around with genetics. So we actually have a herd of Berkshires, British Berkshires, not American or Canadian Berkshires. We actually brought them in from Britain. I know the guys that are working with them are thinking, why do we have Berkshires? But cost of production is a little bit higher. No, it's a lot higher. But all of the production goes into either our stores or into the Japanese market where the premium is paid, and it is awesome meat. It is awesome meat for sure. But fairly small herd, but it's something that we still dabble and play with. We actually think the meat quality perspective from a fresh pork perspective is the best. It's just that most of our pork, which is a good thing, most of our pork is not used fresh anymore. I mean, you got the loin and tenderloin, but virtually everything else is going into processed products where lean fat ratio isn't as critical. Well, lean is more critical. These are the Ontario farms, both sow farms. We've been working with farmers here in Iowa and South Dakota to build more finishing barns. It's awesome. The ability for us to expand and the appreciation for utilization of the manure on the land, and it just works so well. And the economic activity is great to hear the discussion around being proud to be a pork farmer, and everybody should be. We do finish about 400,000 pigs a year. That's sort of small, medium size now. I know I went to England with a group. I don't know, too long ago now, but that used to be a really, really big operation. Not so much anymore. We let Dave talk about the cropping side.
Yeah, we do. We've always kept land associated with our facilities, dating back to Mom and Dad's time, obviously, and we're using the same kind of technology that you guys would be here on the cropland here with the GPS and the spraying, and most of what we grow is canola and wheat because they're good cash crops. All of our enterprises, as you would have gathered, have to be able to stand competitively on their own and be contributor to the overall organization. We don't do any cross-subsidization between the different entities. And so that's kind of important that we know what we're doing and we do the best we can. And I joke about a role reversal. My oldest son now tells me what to do when I get a chance to help him on the operation instead of what used to be the case the other way around. Although I used to think that maybe it wasn't that way, but anyway.
Yeah, he tells you what to do and you listen, same as it used to be, right? Yeah, I'm sure.
That's why I'm standing over here and he's over there.
Well, Dave and Dad hired me to actually be a computer programmer in 1979, and I think that's about the last time I was in a university. And actually, I actually didn't go to university. The only time I went to university was watch my other brother play basketball. But so it's kind of interesting to be back or to come to a university and actually be speaking at it. So I think you guys are in real danger of maybe just discount everything we're saying here. We've got a transport division. I don't know whether you guys know, but Canada's getting out a little bit out of hand on this carbon tax thing. I don't know whether you've heard of it, but we don't like paying taxes, so we figured this is the solution to the carbon tax problem. I'll talk a little bit about our Trochu meat processing facility. So we bought this in 1989, 1990. Small plant. We didn't know what we were doing. Still not sure. But it's been good for us. We certainly learned a lot about pork in the early days. As we mentioned, that was a big reason why we bought it originally. But we decided. One of our genetic customers came to us, and he was Japanese heritage, and he said, you really should sell stuff into Japan. And we said, sure, why not? So we did, and the first load went over, and 90 days later we didn't get the money, and I'm thinking, who should I tell about that, right? So we sold another load, to make it to a different guy, because we figured, well, that one's gone, we might as well try again, and then we actually did get paid for that first one, and that was in 1993, and it's been an important part of our business ever since. It's gone very well. They know what quality is, and they know what quality they want, and what better way to have a product than if you actually have consumers that tell you what they want and then deliver it. So now, we're really internationally focused. I really like the big cities. I like to visit them, but I don't like to stay. We both live on farms still, but it's awesome. And in perspective, and you probably all heard this before, but Shanghai on the right, more people in Canada. Well, 1 million less people in Canada, but about the same as Canada. Tokyo, more people in Canada. And that's in a geographic area that's about the size of Calgary. And then Hong Kong, I don't know, 8 million people or something like that, and they're pretty close together too. So here we're the actual closest port in Vancouver to Asia, and we're only a 12-hour drive from that port. So actually this market in a lot of ways is closer to us than trucking stuff to Eastern Canada or anywhere else. So to us, this is a close market. And I spend quite a bit of time going back over the years to Japan. I've been there a lot. We're starting to see some differentiation in quality in North America. Before, I would say for the longest time, it was just about price. We're now seeing a lot more discussion about quality. You've all seen the NAE programs, the RWA or the antibiotic-free. There's a segment there. The welfare, there's a segment. There are different segments breaking up, and that's the first time in a long time. I think at the end of the day, what you have to have is quality. You can have whatever you want as the marketing tool, but if it doesn't taste very good, it won't matter to most people. It's got to taste good, and you know what? Pork tastes pretty darn good, doesn't it? So just a little bit of breakdown, 90% of our production is exported. We do sell our own pork in our own stores, and that's probably it is our biggest customer. But you can see the breakdown in the other areas, and actually we're sending pork to Europe. It's pretty awesome to be able to go over there and see it over there where the pigs came from, and now we're sending stuff back that's better than what they've got. I keep telling them that anyway. And we've got big customers and small customers. I don't know whether you ever see. I've been to Sumo. It's awesome. Those guys are so big. So a little bit more about the retail stores. Again, started in 1990. We've got 9 locations in Alberta. We're going to add a few more here in the next few years. We actually have 4 Starbucks. I think we're probably the smallest licensee for Starbucks certainly in Canada, I think. And the reason is because we have the locations that they wanted. And we talked to the landlord because they wanted our stores in their location, and we said, don't put any other coffee shop in there unless it's ours. And so Starbucks, I give them a lot of credit. They worked with us and allowed us to do that. And that's, for a company the size of it, it's pretty good. For us, it's really a neat thing to be a part of a system that's so organized, because as we think running Starbucks is easy. You make coffee and you make other stuff and you sell it. Whereas all this other stuff, you grow the pig, you have to figure out what the feed is, you take it through the plant, you chop it up, and then you got 4 or 5 days you got to sell it. And it's so much simpler to do a Starbucks. It's kind of interesting to see how the systems work. Bottom picture's one of our stores, and these are our stores too. The bottom right is in an office building we call it the plus 15, and everybody wants to know why it's plus 15. Well, it's because it's 15 feet above the ground. So there's a walkway in Calgary that's 15 feet above the ground, and everybody interconnects through there. And we thought it'd be just a wintertime use, but it's actually a winter and summer. It's just really convenient. So Our stores in the downtown, when we have 3 downtown Calgary and 1 in downtown Edmonton, they're all connected by the plus 15 walkway, and that's the traffic zone. The ground floor is actually not. The plus 15 is. And you can see we've tried to create a more of a European food experience when we're doing that type of thing. We also, we looked up when we started doing home delivery, and we should have, and internet shopping. So we've had our internet site since 1998. So this new stuff about ordering on the internet is actually not new. But what we didn't know is if we'd have told people about it, we'd be worth about $4 billion right now. But we're just not good at telling people that. But we've been operating an internet site for home delivery for 20 years now. And the reason why I know that is because a newspaper came and asked us if we could talk about our internet service now and how it compares. And so my brother Glenn went back and looked up when the first time it was, and we actually had a newspaper article in 1998 that he looked up that talked about internet shopping. So it's not a huge part of our business. It's an important part, but not a huge. I'm going to say it's probably 3 or 4% of our market is sales on internet and home delivery. It'll grow. But what people tell us about our stores is they like coming to the store. It's a great experience coming to the store. So they don't order online because they'd rather go to the store. But the problem is they're time constrained, they're busy, they stop wherever they're close and whatever, and then they say, oh, I should have went to Sunterra. But at the end, we capture enough of them that it's, I think that it works out pretty well, and we'll grow it. It'll grow. We don't serve number 69. We've thought about it. Because the pig farms generate a lot of that stuff, and if we could just sell it for more than just putting it into fertilizer, that'd be okay. And I have eaten a lot of things. I've traveled Asia a lot, and I have eaten a lot of things, deep fried bumblebees, snake, and some other stuff I didn't know what it was, but I don't think I've had that, although I never order, so you're never really sure. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to do 3 stores in the next 3 years. They're going to be a little different style. This is a small one. It'll be about 3,500 square feet in a downtown suburban area. And we don't know stores the same, and that's good and bad. Hard for systems, but unique to the area, and a lot of things that we will do sell differently. And I'll just give you an example of some of the things that occurred differently. So Calgary is a business city. How many people know Calgary very well at all? Okay, good. So there's not much. So Calgary is about 1.2 million head office city, second largest head office city in Canada, even though it's smaller than the other cities. Near the Rocky Mountains, very high white collar, but very driven, very entrepreneurial. Edmonton, about 1.2 million people, 180 miles up the road, government city. So in Calgary, we've got downtown locations, and we sell about, 300 muffins a day, something like that. In Edmonton, we sell 1,000. And that's because everybody in the government offices come down for coffee in the morning and in the afternoon, and everybody in Calgary just comes down for lunch. So our lunch business in Edmonton is smaller, and our lunch business in Calgary, so it's different by market. So we have to acknowledge that, and in our case, just in terms of a lot of our business is ready to eat and take home. And just to give you some numbers, our downtown stores will serve about 10,000 people per week, per day, lunches per day in our downtown stores, because it's quick, easy, convenient, and we're farmers because we just don't charge enough. So I think from that perspective, it's a very great value. And so we get about 10,000 people a day through our downtown locations for lunch. But we actually have 60 chefs on staff. 30 of them are Red Seal, 30 are working for their Red Seal. So they're making something new every day. So the same selection won't be there necessarily every day. In fact, it won't be, but it changes up. So what we've tried to do is deliver a customer experience to them that's quick, easy, and valuable. And then actually it was a flip of what we actually wanted to try to start to begin with, because to begin with, we wanted everybody to come in and take it home at the end of the day. That was our home meal replacement thing. And what quickly happened was everybody came for lunch. And then now in the last, I'm going to say 5-6 years, they're now starting to buy it and take it home as well. So our business has been going well. And the retail side of the business is comparatively very stable, whereas everybody knows what the pig market does, and you hang on for dear life sometimes, and sometimes you say, I was really smart this year, but it was just because the price was high. It's not really smart, guys. I don't know whether you get confused about that. But for us, it's been a good, stable business for us to be involved in and get customer feedback on. I'm going to talk about a new venture that we've started. It's called Soleterra d'Italia. Sole, I don't speak other language. Sole is sun in Italy, so it's Sunterra Sunterra of Italy, or Sunterra from Italy. So we have a 50-50 joint venture deal with an Italian family. The Simonini family, great family. I think it's their 5th generation. They've been producing prosciutto and salami for over 90 years now, and just a great partner to be. So we visited them because I'd never seen a prosciutto plant, and wanted to have a look. So we went and visited in Italy, and then they came and visited our place, and they'd never seen pork like our pork. So they said, we should buy your pork in Italy. And we said, yes, you should. And so we started working out how we could do that. But at the end of the day, after the second trip, they said, why don't we just build a plant in Canada? Why would we ship it all the way to Italy and then ship it back to North America? And we said, that sounds like a good idea. I always wanted to have a prosciutto plant. Never knew what it was, but I always wanted one. So we built one, and we just actually ate the first ham last week, and the first salami last week, and excited about the new venture. They're going to provide are providing the technical expertise and how to make stuff, and we're providing the pork and hopefully some of the marketing stuff, and we're just really excited about it. And, it turns out this stuff is really good. It's great. So full line, we've got cooked ham over here on the left, which is not smoked. So it's an Italian style cooked ham, which doesn't have smoking with it and tastes great. And then the different types of salami, all the salami's dry cured, nothing cooked. And the prosciutto, of course, is dry cured. And we're excited about the new opportunities. These are actually Italian pictures, but that's basically the salami on the left and the prosciutto drying on the right. We talk about inventory. The Simoninis have about, so it takes 12 months to dry cure the hams, which I don't know how that would compare to a Smithfield or something like that type ham, but Italian hams take about 12 months. And so the inventory is, it's a lot, right? I mean, if you're doing 2,000 legs a week, 52 weeks, you got 100,000 legs, $100 a pop, adds up to a lot of zeros. And so we're actually sending legs over to Italy. They're going to dry cure some of them, and we're going to bring some of those back while we're doing it ourselves too. But the main part of our new plant is the salami and the cooked ham and a little bit of prosciutto, and we're going to see how the prosciutto sells. And we would like it to take it more mainstream. It's pretty expensive here, and we'd like to take it more mainstream. So we'll see. We'll see how we do that. We're thinking that we will price it a little bit differently by producing it here, and maybe get it more mainstream, because it's an excellent product. We really think that it's a different one. And what can be bad about different ways of selling pork, right? Nothing. So I think that we want to leave some time for questions, because it's always easier for us to sort of respond to what people actually want us to hear than actually trying to project what we think you might want to understand. So we've got, I think, 17 minutes and 10 seconds to have questions from the floor, if there's any. If not, I'm going to ask Dave a whole bunch.
Maybe before anybody sticks their hand up quick, I'll just, one of the points that I missed making in my part of the discussion was, we kind of had 3 legs to our stool in terms of how we approach the business, and you saw health and the genetic side, but I didn't talk very much about the service and the real need for having our customers successful with what they purchased from us, because we believed over the long term their success would mean our success. And that was kind of different in the day when we were doing the genetics. It also is different in the meat plant, because we did a novel thing in terms of Ray invited some Japanese butchers to come to Trochu and teach our butchers how to cut meat for that market, which is a novel concept, and nobody else was doing it at that point in time. And then at retail, I don't know whether you were able to see it, but the butchers and the chefs all have outward-facing counters, so they deal directly with consumers. And they are there to talk to and learn from the consumers, make sure that they're successful with our products, so that they in fact do come back and build our business long term. And Ray does the same thing with our customers in retail in Japan and of course in China, because even though it's more expensive initially, it's an investment in a long-term relationship. Some relationships don't work out, but some of the first ones that Ray developed are still with us 20 odd years later.
Yeah, I know that we were supposed to talk about strategy and a little bit too, and now good that Dave said that, because it reminded me. So from a strategy standpoint, I'm going to say we didn't have any. We just sort of farmers decide what's an opportunity and then decide what to jump on. So it's not quite that way, but we've never had a 3-year or 5-year or 10-year plan. We've always responded to opportunities. But the core has always been, as Dave said, is what does the customer need? What's the final customer need, and how do we get there? And value add. Like for us, the value add proposition. So how do we add value to the grain land? Well, produce pigs and cattle. How do we add value to that? The genetic business originally, and then high quality pork. And then how do we add value to the high quality pork? We put it into even higher value stuff like pancetta or prosciutto or ham. So for us, if we can generate more value, and really the Sunterra brand is a very important thing to us. And so we've really tried to brand it. And in Japan, for example, we actually have retail stores that put our brand on their fresh pork in the counter. And that took quite a while because they give up control. But for us, it's important, and we're there, and we're not going to go around them. We're not going to sell them down the street as long as we have a good relationship. So, like Dave said, some of the things that we've done there, it's been 26 years over there, and I go over there a lot to visit with our customers, and it's a personal relationship. It's more there than we get in majority of North American relationships. North American relationships are totally different. In Japan, we actually have 25-year relationships, and we had a party at the Canadian Embassy a couple years ago to recognize customers that have been with us for 20 years or more, and we had 17 come that had been with us for about 10 plus years, but there's 5 of them that had been there for over 20 years. So for us, it's a relationship business. I don't want to sell on price. It's not much. Lots of people like the negotiation of price. I don't. I'd rather have a negotiation on value, and that's where we found it in Japan versus most North American, including Canadian supermarkets, don't appreciate value.
You really don't want Ray asking me questions. Okay, we got one back there.
That's John. No, we're not going to pay any attention to John. Sorry.
It was really what we were hoping to get a sense of how a traditional farm of the 70s and 80s would seek a future in agriculture and animal production and meat production, protein production, and the way you've done it. So thank you very much for that. But as a business, I'm curious, you said you didn't have strategy, Ray, and I'm sorry, I think you're undershooting there. I know dang well you've had a strategy. You maybe didn't put it on a piece of paper, but you guys have always had a vision. But looking back, there were probably some key decisions that you did make that you look back now and say, thank God we did that, because if we didn't, we wouldn't be where we are today. Or are there other decisions, if you wouldn't mind sharing them, where you say, dang, what were we thinking of when we did that? So I'm interested in this sort of moving forward, and what are some of the key decisions that were positive, and maybe what were some decisions that didn't quite work out?
Sure.
I can talk a little bit while Ray's gathering his thoughts. There were different points in time, John, when we were challenged with current economics, whether it was related to the industry or related to our partnerships and relationships. And there certainly were times when an easier route would have been to give up on some of our principles and move where the direction was a lot easier to go. And fortunately, for virtually every instance, we didn't. And we suffered short run in some cases, either with people that we were working with, or certainly on the financial side. I don't know what it's like in the States. In Canada, we've got a more concentrated ownership of the banking. And, you know, agriculture has gone through phases in Canada where it's the flavor of the month. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. And it hasn't been for a while now. And through that time, we were used to building relationships with financial institutions that were durable. And right at the point in time we were moving into further diversification into the retail side, we were told by our financial institution, you can't do that. You should just do one thing. You're not going to succeed with more than one. And they actually terminated the arrangements with us. And so if we would have just folded up and gone back to being just a pig production company, I don't know whether we would have survived, but we certainly wouldn't be here. And so, you know, there are challenges, and sticking to the things that make the most sense is what we did, and the principles that we had in pursuing those things, what kept us going. Ray's right, we didn't have a specific plan saying we're going to reach a certain scale in a certain period of time, but we did see, we thought we saw trends, and when the pendulum was swinging over there to, you know, get your shopping cart and take your punishment at Costco on Saturday and load up, and that's all you're going to do, and you don't expect any service. On the retail side, we thought there'd be a percentage of the market that would say, well, I kind of like the relationship, and I'd like to know what's going on, and I don't want to buy, you know, 6 weeks worth of pickles when I only want one. And so, you know, that created the opportunity, and Glenn's attention to the service and the character and building that brand really made the difference, in spite of others looking at us and saying, you guys are a couple of crazy farmers, what the hell are you doing in retail, right?
Yeah, and I think that there's a couple things that were really important. One was buying the meat plant when we did, to be able to take the pork offshore, because the Canadian industry, 65% of our production is exported. And so we're really at the whim of international markets. But, you know, the swings between the Canadian dollar and the US dollar over the years have been, you know, as much as 50%. So that's been something. And to have the protection of the plant has been great, because even in years where the pig production side's done poorly, generally speaking, the plant side has done well. And, you know, with the integration that you see now in the United States and Canada, it's sort of trended that way for sure. And of course, we were doing that in 1990 as an insurance policy for our farm. So that was certainly a decision. I think that another decision, you know, that we probably backed into more than anything was, you know, we opened up our first stores, and we thought, well, everybody's just going to buy food and take it home. But we're also willing to say that we're wrong. I usually just say my brothers are wrong. I was always right. But the reality is that, you know, we quickly transformed the store into more of a lunch business than a take-home business, because it was too early for people to think about take-home on a regular basis. So they are now, but in 1990 they weren't, and we thought they would. And you know, consumers have come around a bit over the years, but no, it's one of those things that I think that being willing to change and adapt has been important. I think that one of the things that we probably had a difficult decision or a difficult process was related to banking and government. You know, we tended to believe people, and you know, I think there's been a couple times when we've been sort of left out on a tree limb by ourselves by having people say, yes, no, we'll support you, we'll do this type of thing. The BSE crisis is a good example of that. We really felt that the beef industry needed a new plant in Canada, and we thought we would be able to get the appropriate testing and approvals, and we're told by senior government officials that we would. And then the banking crisis hit, and the banks ran for cover, and the governments ran for cover, and they just left us out there. And so I think, was it the wrong decision? No, but our decision to trust people that sometimes aren't very trustworthy is probably what we've learned through that process too, is you got to have the right relationships, and you got to have believable ones, and we enjoy those, and that makes business fun when you have great relationships with farmers or with customers. I mean, that's what it's about, is the relationship business. The other stuff that isn't relationship business, it's not as much fun, so we'd rather not do that.
Have time for a question or two?
Guess we put everybody to sleep.
Nah, it's more, I don't know if I want to say it in front of 500 people, which I get that.
How do you guys handle the transfer pricing between the companies?
Yeah, the transfer pricing, the companies that I run get the best pricing. No, that's, I think that part of it has been the death of a lot of integrated companies is whatever area has the strongest personalities actually probably win, and that actually sometimes will impact negatively on the company. And we're lucky in that, Dave ran the pig operation, I did the meats and the financial side, and Glenn did the markets. So we were all pretty well even, and we couldn't get over on each other. And so I think what we've done specifically is it's market. So we sell from our meat plant to the stores at the lowest price that we sell to anybody outside. So the performance indicator is you want to sell to the markets, you got to sell at the lowest price you sell to anybody outside. And if that's the case, then the markets get a good deal, or the meats have to push the price up. And both ways, that's a win. And the same thing on the farm side. It's a little easier on the pig side moving to the plant because there's lots of market prices, but we stay intact with market pricing because we still have to know how each of those business units will operate. On the Soleterra d'Italia front, it's a 50-50 partnership, so we got to make sure that our partner's comfortable with the transfer price. So we use a USDA-based price for the product going in. And so for us, it's critical. It's a market-based price that we can be very transparent on and make sure that nobody's getting the benefit of something else. And sometimes it's hard because there's a lot of unique products, and those products are, between Soleterra d'Italia and Sunterra Markets is a little different because nobody makes those products in Canada. So it's a different pricing system. But, to us, it's going to be a fair price one way or the other. And as soon as we start selling volumes other places, then again, it'll be the same thing. The lowest price that's sold to anybody else, our own stores will get the benefit of.
Time for one last question.
I'm curious about with your retail stores, what kind of signals are you getting from the marketplace in terms of antibiotic-free production and organic, et cetera?
Okay, good question. I like it. Realistically, no, my own view is that pork consumers don't care much about those things. The ones that aren't pork consumers care a lot. We get the so I think it's different in other organic things like the plants that that vegetables are what food eats, right? That you guys know that, right? Vegetables are for food, not for us. Anyway, takes a little while. But realistically, I think that pork consumers want good quality pork. They want it to be safe. I think the antibiotic thing is more important to more pork consumers than organic or others. And the reason I'm going to say that is because it's a very simple thought process. It's, well, would I rather have the pork have consumed antibiotics or not? And that to a pork consumer says, well, of course, I'd rather have not, until they think about it and say, well, there's consequences to it. So I think that the antibiotic thing has a bit more at the consumer level. In Sunterra Markets ourselves, we don't sell antibiotic-free pork. We sell our pork, and we're there. We have our chefs, we have our meat cutters. Everybody's there to explain why it is that we do. So we've got the advantage of being able to tell the right story directly to our customers if they ask, and they rarely ask. What comes through our doors generally are people that believe Sunterra and our name and say, you know what, they've taken care of it. I don't have to ask those hard questions because I know that they're credible and they've taken care of it. And that's a difficult thing in normal markets where you've got lots of breakdowns in between. So yes, there's going to be more antibiotic-free NAE RWA. I believe there is. It'll take a long time before it's a large segment, I think. Organic, I just think it's really expensive, and in our own view, organic is hard on the soil, hard on the environment. So we need to get the balanced story out. And I just think it's too expensive for the bulk of people. And I think that what we have to concentrate on is our customers, not the customers that will never be our customers. And we have to be a part of what social license is used way too much, but I think we have to be part of being able to describe our story when people want to know about it. But I think it's about high quality, good pork. I really like the NPPC video that comes up. I get the Food Marketing Institute newsletter, and the pork producer comes up and explains about animal welfare. I think it's very well done. I don't know how many people watch it, but I think that's the story we have to get out more and more when we can. But really, most people don't want to know. Like in our stores, we don't have pictures of nice pigs, right? People want to eat bacon. I mean, there's two types of people in the world. There's bacon lovers and liars, right? So, I think a lot of people don't want to know. They just want to eat it, and that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong. We don't have to educate those people. So I think that we're, and we're in good position, I think, generally.
I might just steal a couple of seconds here, too. One of the things that I think we have to be conscious of as food producers is the general population has ADD, right? Unless you can get it in 140 characters and listen to a sweet tweet and that's all you need to know about, then that's where it stops. And so from our part, we have to be able to get the messaging out there so they understand. And that's partly why we work so hard on the relationships, because the relationship will overweigh that. There's so much of the population today that has basically no points of reference on which to make decisions. In Canada, there's fewer farmers than barbers. And so if you're in a situation where you're trying to have somebody understand how it works, you're working with a population that doesn't really know. And we've been inundated with what I call cause marketing, where people make money by promoting just say no. And so we have to also be in a position where we can address that in a way that starts to give people those points of reference so they can make decisions that are different than that tweet that they get that says, research says, da-da-da-da, right? When it's not really what research says at all.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, excellent. Thanks for that. Thanks.